The biggest changes in life rarely begin with the right decision. Sometimes, they begin with the wrong door. Monday mornings always smelled like polished marble and expensive coffee. By 8 o'clock, Carter Holdings had already become a symphony of clicking heels, ringing phones, and elevator chimes echoing through the 40-story headquarters in downtown Manhattan. Everyone moved with purpose. Everyone except me. I was crouched beneath my desk, trying to convince my 7-year-old son that hiding under office furniture wasn't a permanent solution to life. Oliver. No. You promised. So did you. I couldn't help smiling. I promised we'd get breakfast after Mommy finished organizing today's board meeting. You said 10 minutes. I know. It's been forever. It's been 8. He peeked out from beneath the desk with dramatic disappointment. That's basically forever. Being a single mother meant becoming an expert at impossible schedules. School had unexpectedly closed for teacher training. My babysitter had canceled before sunrise. Missing work wasn't an option. So Oliver came with me. Again. Thankfully, our executive floor had a small archive room that almost no one used anymore. Quiet. Warm. Safe. I had turned the old sofa into a temporary reading corner with coloring books, juice boxes, and dinosaur comics. It wasn't perfect, but neither was life. We made things work anyway. I'll be back in 5 minutes. You said that before. I mean it this time. He crossed his little arms. I'll believe you when I see pancakes. I laughed softly before kissing the top of his head. You negotiate like a lawyer. I learned from you. Outside the archive room, the executive floor buzzed with nervous energy. The boss is coming. People straightened their jackets, checked their reflections, adjusted presentation folders. Even employees who normally joked over coffee suddenly lowered their voices. I had worked at Carter Holdings for almost 3 years. I'd seen Damian Carter exactly twice, both times from across crowded conference rooms. The company's legendary CEO rarely stayed in one place. Some called him a genius. Others called him intimidating. Everyone agreed on one thing. He noticed everything. I preferred staying unnoticed. Life was simpler that way. At precisely 8:30, the private elevator opened. A group of executives stepped out first. Then he appeared. Tall, broad shoulders, dark tailored suit. His neatly trimmed beard framed a face that seemed carved from quiet confidence. Black tattoos disappeared beneath crisp shirt cuffs whenever he adjusted his watch. His blue-gray eyes swept across the hallway with calm precision. Conversation stopped. He nodded politely to several department heads before walking toward the executive boardroom. His assistant hurried beside him. Conference room A is prepared. Damian glanced briefly toward the hallway. The investor files? Already inside. He continued walking, without slowing, without hesitation. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of opening the boardroom door, he opened mine. The archive room. The old wooden door creaked softly. I looked up from organizing folders. He looked in. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Oliver looked up from the sofa. His coloring book slid onto the floor. You opened the wrong door. The little voice echoed through the quiet room. I nearly stopped breathing. Oliver. But Damian didn't seem offended. If anything, he looked almost surprised. I believe you're right. Oliver nodded seriously. The meeting room is over there. He pointed toward the hallway with complete confidence. A slow smile appeared on Damian's face. The first genuine smile anyone on the executive floor had probably seen that morning. Thank you. You saved me. Oliver grinned proudly. I know directions. I can see that. I quickly stood. I'm so sorry, Mr. Carter. My son shouldn't. He did nothing wrong. His answer came gently. He told me the truth. Embarrassment warmed my face. I apologized for bringing him to work. You don't need to apologize. His eyes moved briefly toward the coloring books stacked beside the sofa, then toward the lunchbox resting on a nearby chair. Finally, back to me. You've had a difficult morning. It wasn't a question. I nodded before I could stop myself. My sitter canceled. I didn't have another choice. For a moment, the powerful CEO said nothing. He simply looked at Oliver, who had already returned to coloring a dinosaur. Then he looked around the modest room, not judging, observing, almost understanding. I hope your meeting goes well, Oliver suddenly said without looking up. Damian chuckled quietly. I hope so too. He finally stepped backward into the hallway. Thank you for correcting my mistake. The right door was over there. Oliver pointed again. Damian glanced once more toward the boardroom, then back at the little boy. Perhaps, His voice became unexpectedly thoughtful. Or perhaps this was exactly the door I was supposed to open. The door closed gently behind him. I stood frozen for several seconds. Outside, the executive floor slowly came back to life. Inside the archive room, Oliver looked up with complete innocence. Mom, yes. I think your boss looked lonely. I stared at the closed door. For reasons I couldn't explain. So did I. The people who change your life rarely announce themselves. They simply begin noticing the things everyone else overlooks. I spent the rest of that morning pretending nothing unusual had happened. Emails, meeting schedules, travel confirmations, conference calls. My fingers moved across the keyboard while my thoughts remained trapped inside one unexpected conversation. You opened the wrong door. Oliver had said it so naturally, yet somehow, it no longer felt true. Every now and then, I caught employees whispering outside the executive offices. The board meeting lasted less than an hour. That's impossible. They finished early? No. The boss canceled half the agenda. I barely paid attention. Corporate decisions belonged to people far above my position. My world revolved around calendars, deadlines, and making sure everyone else's day ran smoothly. That was enough. Around noon, I returned to the archive room carrying 2 paper bags. I kept my promise. Oliver looked up immediately. Pancakes. Pancakes. He cheered quietly before opening the container. I knew you'd remember. I always remember. He smiled with complete confidence. I know. Children trusted so easily. Sometimes I wished adults could do the same. The afternoon passed peacefully. Oliver colored dinosaurs while I finished organizing several years of financial records that no one seemed interested in anymore. At nearly 3 o'clock, a soft knock echoed through the room. I expected another assistant. Instead, Damian Carter stood outside the half-open door. For a second, neither of us spoke. I hope I'm opening the correct door this time. His voice carried the faintest trace of humor. Oliver immediately pointed toward the doorway. It is. Damian nodded seriously. Good. I'd hate to make the same mistake twice. I quickly stood. Mr. Carter, I'm sorry, the archive isn't usually. You don't need to apologize. His eyes moved toward Oliver. I was actually looking for your young navigator. Oliver looked pleasantly surprised. Me? Yes. Damian reached into his jacket pocket and produced a folded building map. I've been told you know this floor better than I do. Oliver climbed off the sofa. I do. He spread the map across the table with remarkable concentration. The meeting room is here. He circled it with a green crayon. The cafeteria is here. Another circle. And this. He proudly tapped the archive room. Is the best room. Damian glanced toward me. Why is that? Oliver answered without hesitation. Because Mom smiles in here. I felt my cheeks warm. Damian looked around the room again. The old sofa. The scattered coloring books. The lunchbox. The neatly stacked folders. Nothing expensive. Nothing impressive. Just ordinary life. I think your son has good judgment. Oliver grinned. I know. As Damian prepared to leave, something slipped from Oliver's backpack. A worn-out toy dinosaur landed near Damian's shoes. Before I could react, Damian bent down and picked it up. One tiny arm had been glued back together several times. Its green paint had almost disappeared. You've had this for a while. Oliver nodded. Since I was 3. Why not buy a new one? Oliver looked genuinely confused. This one already knows me. The hallway outside remained busy. Phones rang. Executives hurried past. Yet for one quiet moment, everything seemed to stop. Damian gently handed the toy back. I hope you keep him. I will. He looks loyal. Oliver hugged the dinosaur. He is. Damian smiled. So are the best friends. Later that afternoon, I walked Oliver toward the private elevator before my sister arrived to pick him up. He hugged me tightly. See you tonight. I love you. I love you more. As the elevator doors closed, I noticed Damian standing alone near the windows overlooking Manhattan. No assistants. No executives. Just him. He watched the city in complete silence. Something about that image stayed with me. Power usually looked loud. His looked lonely. Across the executive floor, Damian's longtime advisor, Lucas Bennett, approached quietly. You canceled 3 investor meetings. I know. The board is asking questions. They can wait. Lucas hesitated. You've never postponed business for personal reasons. Damian kept looking through the glass. Did you know she brought her son to work because her childcare fell through? Lucas blinked. No, neither did anyone else. Another long silence followed. Everyone noticed missed deadlines. No one noticed why. Lucas studied his employer carefully. This is unlike you. Damien finally turned. I've spent years believing success was measured by numbers. He looked once more toward the archive room at the end of the hallway. Today a little boy corrected me, and somehow reminded me I've been walking past the most important people without ever opening the right door. Just before 5 o'clock, I finished locking the archive room. The hallway was nearly empty. As I gathered my bag, I noticed a small white envelope resting on top of my desk. No name, no signature. Inside was a handwritten note. For the employee who always finds a way to keep both work and family together. Attached was a voucher for a year's childcare through the Carter Family Foundation. No explanation, no publicity, only one short sentence written beneath it. No parent should have to choose between a career and a child. I stood perfectly still, reading the note again. Across the hallway, Damien stepped into the private elevator without ever looking in my direction. The doors closed, and somehow, his silence said more than gratitude ever could. I used to believe kindness was something people noticed. Then I realized the quietest acts often leave the deepest marks. The childcare voucher stayed inside my purse for 3 days before I finally believed it was real. I read the handwritten note every night after Oliver fell asleep. No signature, no publicity, no cameras, just compassion wrapped inside plain white paper. That was what unsettled me the most. In a city where every generous gesture usually came with a headline, someone had chosen silence. Monday arrived with another whirlwind of meetings. For the first time in months, I didn't have to worry about finding someone to watch Oliver. The Carter Family Foundation had arranged everything before I even completed the paperwork. Professional, respectful, effortless. As I watched Oliver happily wave goodbye outside the childcare center, relief settled into my chest like warm sunlight. You'll be here after work? I promise. He smiled. I know. Children always believe promises. Adults learn to question them. Back at headquarters, life returned to its usual rhythm. Conference schedules changed every hour. Phones never stopped ringing. Executives rushed through the marble corridors carrying expensive laptops and expensive worries. I quietly updated Damien Carter's calendar without expecting to see him. That assumption lasted exactly 12 minutes. Hannah. I looked up. Damien stood outside my workstation, holding a folder. Several nearby employees immediately pretended not to stare. Mr. Carter, I need someone to reorganize next month's international schedule. Of course. My assistant is handling investors. He placed the folder on my desk. I was told you're the most organized person on this floor. I blinked. I'm not sure who told you that. I asked. Simple, direct, unexpected. The assignment should have taken 2 hours. Instead, it became an entire afternoon. Damien's calendar looked impossible. Meetings in New York, charity events in Boston, board dinners in Chicago, private flights, video conferences across multiple time zones. Most assistants would have rearranged appointments mechanically. I noticed something else. 3 hospital charity visits had quietly disappeared from the calendar. I hesitated, then knocked softly on his office door. Come in. His office overlooked the Manhattan skyline. Minimal furniture, dark wood, floor-to-ceiling windows. Almost nothing personal. No family photographs. No awards. Just space. I found a scheduling conflict. He looked up. Show me. I pointed toward the screen. If these investor meetings move 30 minutes earlier, you won't have to cancel the children's hospital visit. For several seconds, he studied the calendar. Then he looked at me. Most people would have removed the charity event. I know. Why didn't you? I shrugged gently. Business creates success. I clicked the highlighted appointment. But people remember kindness. His expression became strangely thoughtful. My mother used to say something similar. It was the first personal thing he had ever shared. The revised schedule worked perfectly. As I packed my laptop, Damien spoke again. Thank you. You've saved something important. I'm glad. I turned to leave. Hannah. I stopped. You don't ask many questions. I'm sorry. About me. I smiled politely. I assume everyone has things they'd rather explain when they're ready. For the first time, his guarded expression softened. That's rare. So I've been told. That evening, rain covered Manhattan in silver reflections. Employees hurried toward taxis with umbrellas raised against the wind. As I stepped outside, I realized I had forgotten mine upstairs. Wonderful. The rain intensified. Before I could run across the street, a familiar black umbrella appeared above my head. I thought you might need this. Damien, standing beside me as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world. You'll get wet. I have another. I accepted the umbrella reluctantly. Thank you. Our driver pulled the sedan toward the entrance. He opened the rear door, but didn't get inside immediately. Instead, he noticed a small drawing sticking out of my tote bag. A green dinosaur wearing a business tie. Oliver's handwriting covered the bottom. For Mr. Doorboss. I laughed despite myself. He insisted you needed a dinosaur assistant. Damien carefully studied the drawing. His eyes lingered on the uneven crayons. Then he smiled. I've received paintings worth millions. He accepted the folded paper with surprising care. This may be my favorite gift. The following morning, the drawing sat inside a simple black frame on Damien's desk. No one mentioned it. No one dared ask why. But everyone noticed. Lucas Bennett noticed too. You've never displayed personal items in your office. Damien didn't look away from the framed dinosaur. I know. You've changed. A faint smile crossed Damien's face. No. He paused. I think I'm finally remembering the man I used to be. Across the hallway, I walked past his office carrying another stack of files. For just a moment, our eyes met through the glass. No words. No smiles. Only quiet understanding. Neither of us realized that someone else was watching from the lobby below, photographing every employee who entered Damien Carter's executive floor. And for the first time, my face was among them. The most dangerous secrets are never spoken aloud. They're discovered by accident, behind doors that were never meant to open. A week passed. Life settled into a rhythm that almost felt normal. Oliver loved his new childcare center. I stopped worrying every morning. Work became easier. Breathing became easier. Yet something had quietly changed inside Carter Holdings. People had started noticing me. Not because I wanted attention, because Damien Carter kept asking for me. Hannah, can you review this? Hannah, does this schedule work? Hannah, I'd like your opinion. The requests were always professional, always respectful, never excessive. But executives noticed patterns long before they noticed people. Whispers followed me through polished hallways. The boss trusts her. She wasn't even senior staff. How did that happen? I ignored them. Rumors disappeared faster than deadlines. Or so I hoped. Late Thursday evening, most employees had already gone home. Rain tapped softly against the towering windows. Only a few office lights still glowed across the executive floor. I stayed behind to finish preparing documents for an international merger meeting scheduled the following morning. One folder, one signature, then home. That was the plan. As I carried the completed files toward Damien's office, his assistant, Emily, rushed past with her phone pressed against her ear. I'll meet them downstairs. She barely looked at me. The board members just arrived early. She disappeared into the elevator before I could answer. Damien's office stood empty. The lights were still on. The conference folder needed to be placed on his desk before the meeting. I hesitated, then knocked. No answer. Another knock. Silence. I slowly opened the door. The office was empty. I'll leave the folder and go. Simple. Professional. Nothing more. As I crossed the room, voices echoed faintly from somewhere beyond the bookshelf. I froze. There was another room. A hidden door stood slightly open. I hadn't noticed it before. The voices grew clearer. Shipment arrives tomorrow. Our competitors are watching. No mistakes. Curiosity wasn't what pulled me closer. Concern did. The tone wasn't business. It was different. I stepped carefully toward the opening. Beyond it lay a private meeting room unlike anything in the building. Dark wood. Security monitors. Digital city maps. Several men in tailored suits stood around a large table. Their posture wasn't corporate. It was disciplined. Alert. Damien stood at the head of the room. Calm. Commanding. Silent until everyone else finished speaking. Then he spoke. No unnecessary force. His voice remained steady. We solve problems without harming innocent people. One man objected. They've crossed the line. Damien's expression never changed. So don't become them. The room fell silent. I had never seen leadership like that. Power without shouting. Authority without fear. Before I could quietly step away, my elbow brushed against the edge of the hidden door. Click. The sound seemed impossibly loud. Every head turned. My heart stopped. Damien looked directly at me. For one endless second, neither of us moved. Hannah. He didn't sound angry, only surprised. My voice disappeared. I'm sorry. I thought your office was empty. The other men immediately exchanged cautious glances. One instinctively moved toward the door. Damien raised one hand. He stopped instantly. No. His single word carried absolute authority. The room obeyed. Damien walked toward me slowly. Not threatening. Not smiling. Simply thoughtful. You weren't supposed to see this. I know. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to. I believe you. His answer came before I finished speaking. That somehow made me feel worse. I should leave. You should. I nodded quickly. I'm sorry. Again. Always apologizing. As I turned to go, Damien spoke once more. Hannah. I looked back. What you saw tonight. He paused. Doesn't define who I am. His blue-gray eyes held something I hadn't expected. Not fear. Not anger. Hope. As though my opinion mattered. I answered honestly. I wasn't afraid of the room. His expression shifted slightly. I was afraid. I searched for the right words. Because you looked lonely standing in the middle of it. Silence. No one spoke. Even the rain outside seemed to stop. Behind Damien, the men exchanged confused glances. No one had answered him like that before. Not as a boss. Not as a powerful man. Simply, as a human being. I quietly walked away. The elevator doors closed before my legs stopped trembling. Back inside the hidden conference room, no one moved. Lucas Bennett finally broke the silence. She knows. Damien remained standing exactly where Hannah had left him. Yes. What now? Damien looked toward the closed bookshelf door, then toward the framed dinosaur drawing resting on the shelf beside his office desk. Finally, he answered. Now. His voice was softer than anyone in the room had ever heard. We make sure her ordinary life stays ordinary. No one questioned the order, because they all understood what it truly meant. From that night forward, protecting Hannah Brooks was no longer a business decision. It had become personal. Far beyond the walls of Carter Holdings, however, a black SUV remained parked across the street. Inside, a man lowered his camera after capturing photographs of Hannah leaving the building alone. He zoomed in on her face one final time, then smiled. The secretary. He slipped the photograph into a folder labeled only with one handwritten word. Carter. The people we love are rarely chosen because they're weak. They're chosen because someone else discovers they're our greatest strength. The feeling began before the danger did. You know how your instincts sometimes whisper long before your mind understands. That Friday morning, something felt wrong. The lobby was busier than usual. Security officers spoke quietly into their radios. Several unfamiliar maintenance workers moved through the building, replacing ceiling lights that had worked perfectly the day before. Everything appeared normal, almost too normal. Oliver ran toward me after school with the excitement only a 7-year-old could carry. Mom, he threw his arms around my waist. I made something. He proudly held up a paper airplane covered in colorful stars. For Mr. Boss. I laughed. He already has a dinosaur. Dinosaurs need airplanes. That logic was impossible to argue with. As we walked toward Carter Holdings, Oliver skipped beside me, telling me about planets, dinosaurs, and why pancakes tasted better on Fridays. His world was beautifully uncomplicated. I wished I could keep it that way forever. Across the street, inside a parked black SUV, a camera lens followed us. Confirmed. The man lowered his binoculars. The woman has the child with her. Another voice crackled through the radio. Orders. Keep watching. No contact. Not yet. Inside the executive floor, Damien reviewed contracts while Lucas Bennett entered without knocking. We have a problem. Damien looked up immediately. Lucas placed several photographs across the desk. Each one showed Hannah. Leaving work. Walking Oliver to school. Entering the child care center. Buying groceries. Damien's jaw tightened. Where did these come from? Our surveillance team intercepted them. Someone has been watching her for days. Silence filled the office. Then Damien asked the only question that mattered. Does she know? No. And Oliver? No. Damien slowly stood. Every movement became controlled. Deliberate. The calm before a storm. They're no longer observing me. Lucas nodded once. They've shifted their attention. Damien's blue-gray eyes darkened. Because of me. I had just finished organizing the afternoon schedule when my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Hello. Silence. Then a man's voice. Soft. Cold. Your son has a nice smile. My blood froze. Who is this? Click. The call ended. I immediately dialed the childcare center. Hi, this is Hannah Brooks. Is Oliver okay? The receptionist answered cheerfully. He's perfectly fine. He just finished art class. Relief nearly made my knees give out. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe. I wanted to believe that. The moment Damien saw my face, he knew something had happened. Hannah. I tried forcing a smile. I'm okay. No. His voice remained calm. You're frightened. I hadn't even realized I was shaking until he gently handed me a glass of water. What happened? I hesitated, then told him about the phone call. Every word. Every pause. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, his expression never changed. But something behind his eyes did. He quietly pressed a button beneath his desk. Within seconds, Lucas entered. Closed the executive floor. Lucas looked from Damien to me. No questions. Only action. He nodded once and disappeared. I frowned. Mr. Carter. Damien. The correction came almost automatically. Then he seemed surprised he'd said it aloud. I noticed. So did he. Neither of us mentioned it. I think you're taking this too seriously. He looked directly into my eyes. I don't. 20 minutes later, Oliver arrived from the child care center escorted by 2 discreet security officers. He ran toward me. Mom. I knelt and hugged him tighter than ever before. You okay? I'm great. He smiled innocently. Why are those nice men following me? I couldn't answer. Damien did. They're making sure superheroes get home safely. Oliver's eyes widened. I'm a superhero. You protect your mother. Damien smiled faintly. That's a very important job. Oliver nodded proudly. I can do that. I know you can. As evening settled over Manhattan, Damien stood alone in his office while Lucas reviewed security reports. We've increased surveillance. The apartment? Covered. The school? Covered. The childcare center? Covered. Lucas finally asked the question he'd been avoiding. Should we move them? Damien stared out across the city lights. If I do, their lives change forever. If I don't. He never finished the sentence. He didn't have to. Both men already knew how it ended if they waited too long. Meanwhile, across town, Hannah tucked Oliver into bed. Mom. Yes. Mr. Doorboss looked worried today. He was. Because of us. I gently brushed the hair away from his forehead. I don't know. Oliver thought quietly for a moment. I think he doesn't like being alone. The room fell silent. Outside, rain tapped softly against the apartment window. Far away, Damien sat alone inside a black sedan parked beneath the streetlight across from our building. Not watching. Protecting. He remained there until every light in our apartment went dark. Across the street, another vehicle watched him. The man inside picked up his phone. Boss. His voice was low. Carter has taken the bait. He'll protect the woman. A satisfied laugh answered from the other end. Good. That means we finally know exactly where to strike next. Home isn't always a place. Sometimes, it's the first person who refuses to let you face danger alone. I noticed the black SUV before Damien ever mentioned it. It appeared every evening. Different driver. Same parking spot. Always across the street from my apartment. At first, I assumed it belonged to a neighbor. Then I realized something strange. Whenever Oliver and I walked home, the vehicle remained. Whenever we entered our building, it disappeared. The pattern repeated for 4 nights. By the 5th, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Monday morning arrived under heavy gray skies. I tried convincing myself I was imagining everything. People watch crime shows. People became paranoid. That was all this was, wasn't it? As I entered Carter Holdings, Damien was already waiting near the private elevator. Not inside. Waiting. For me. Hannah. His voice was calm. We need to talk. Something inside me tightened. Is something wrong? Yes. He didn't soften the answer. And I'd rather tell you the truth than let someone else frighten you. His private office felt quieter than ever. The framed dinosaur still stood proudly beside the window. Oliver's paper airplane rested nearby. 2 small reminders that warmth could exist even in a room built for power. Damien closed the door. I've increased security around you. I noticed. You noticed the SUV. I nodded. I thought someone was following us. They were. The words landed like ice. But not the vehicle you saw. I stared at him. The SUV belongs to my security team. They've been protecting you. Silence filled the room. Protecting me from who? Damien looked toward the skyline before answering. Someone who believes hurting innocent people is the fastest way to reach me. The room suddenly felt much smaller. I don't understand. You don't need to. I do. His expression softened. You were never supposed to become part of my world. But you already are. I walked to the window. The city stretched endlessly beneath us. Thousands of people. Millions of stories. So what happens now? Damien joined me. I have two choices. I looked at him. I can pretend the danger doesn't exist. And hope. Or I move you somewhere they can't reach. I laughed nervously. You mean witness protection? No. My home. I turned sharply. What? My estate is secure. Private. No one enters without my permission. I can't. You can. I won't. I'm not moving into your house. His jaw tightened slightly. I know how this sounds. It sounds insane. It probably does. I folded my arms. I barely know you. His answer came quietly. I know. But I know enough to understand I can't forgive myself if something happens to you. Or Oliver. Those last two words carried more weight than the rest. Oliver. Not just me. That afternoon, Oliver arrived after school carrying another drawing. This one showed 3 stick figures. One tall, one medium, one very small. Above them he had written in uneven letters, the safe team. Damien knelt beside him. Who's this? He pointed to the tallest figure. That's you. And this? Mom. And the little guy? Oliver looked offended. That's me. I made you taller. Damien smiled. Thank you. Oliver looked at both of us carefully. You two argue a lot. We do. You use your serious voices. I couldn't help laughing. Damien actually did too. Then Oliver asked the question neither of us expected. If scary people are looking for Mom, can't we all stay together? Silence. Children always reached simple conclusions, adults complicated. Later that evening, Lucas entered Damien's office carrying another intelligence report. They've moved. Damien looked up immediately. Where? Closer. Lucas spread satellite photographs across the desk. They rented an apartment 2 blocks from Hannah's building yesterday. Damien's expression hardened. They're preparing. For surveillance? Lucas slowly shook his head. No. For opportunity. 30 minutes later, Damien stood outside my apartment building. Not in a luxury sedan. Not surrounded by bodyguards. Alone. I opened the door after hearing the knock. He looked exhausted. More human than powerful. I know you said no. I did. I won't argue. He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a single electronic keycard. No address. You'll only use it if you choose. I looked up. It's for the guest wing. Separate entrance. Separate living space. You'll have complete privacy. I've arranged everything for Oliver too. I stared at the key. He wasn't trying to control my life. He was trying to preserve it. I don't want your charity. His eyes met mine. It isn't charity. What is it? His answer barely rose above a whisper. The only way I know to protect the people who matter. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Behind me, Oliver peeked around the hallway corner. Mr. Boss? Damien smiled immediately. Hi, buddy. Oliver noticed the keycard. Are we going on an adventure? Neither Damien nor I answered. Because deep inside, we both knew that if I accepted that key, nothing in our lives would ever be ordinary again. The strongest walls are never built from stone. They're built by the people who quietly decide you're worth protecting. I didn't sleep much that night. The keycard remained on my kitchen table. Every time I walked past it, I stopped. Every time I stopped, I heard Damien's voice. The only way I know to protect the people who matter. He hadn't said he loved me. He hadn't asked for anything. He had simply offered safety. And somehow, that frightened me more than danger itself. The following morning, Oliver wandered into the kitchen rubbing his sleepy eyes. He immediately spotted the silver keycard. Is that for the adventure? I smiled weakly. Maybe. Are we going? I don't know yet. He climbed onto his chair and quietly ate his cereal. Children often sensed emotions adults try to hide. I think Mr. Boss was sad. Why? Because he asked nicely. I looked at my son. What do you mean? When grown-ups ask nicely, it means they really hope you'll say yes. I had no answer. By noon, I was back at Carter Holdings. The executive floor felt strangely quiet. Lucas approached me before I even reached my desk. Mr. Carter would like to see you. His tone remained professional, but his eyes carried unmistakable concern. I nodded. Damien stood beside the window when I entered. He didn't turn immediately. I won't pressure you. He already knew why I had come. I appreciate the offer. But, I know. He finally faced me. You don't want Oliver growing up surrounded by armed security. No. I want him growing up surrounded by normal. A faint smile touched Damien's face. So do I. His answer surprised me. For the first time, I realized he wasn't trying to pull us into his world. He was trying to keep our world alive. I'll make you a different offer. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were architectural drawings. The guest residence stood almost 200 yards away from the main house. Separate entrance, separate driveway, separate garden, private kitchen, private living room, even a small bedroom already decorated for a child. You planned all this? I hoped. You were that certain? No. His voice softened. I was that worried. Silence settled between us again. Not uncomfortable, just honest. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. That afternoon, everything changed. Oliver's childcare center called. Mrs. Brooks. Yes. Oliver isn't hurt. My heart immediately slowed. But another parent reported seeing the same unfamiliar man outside the playground 3 days in a row. Every muscle in my body tightened. What did he look like? Tall. Dark jacket. Baseball cap. He never entered. He only watched. I thanked them before ending the call. When I looked up, Damien had already read the fear on my face. Without asking permission, he quietly picked up his phone. Lucas. His voice became calm. Initiate Blue Haven. No shouting. No panic. Just immediate action. Within minutes, several discreet security specialists moved through the building with remarkable efficiency. No one caused alarm. No one attracted attention. Employees continued working, completely unaware that an emergency plan had just begun. By evening, I unlocked the apartment door one final time. Only one suitcase stood beside the couch. Oliver looked around our little home. Are we coming back? I knelt beside him. Of course. This is still our home. We're only borrowing another place for a little while. He accepted that answer with the quiet trust only children possess. As we stepped outside, Damien waited beside a dark SUV. Not wearing a business suit. Simple black sweater. Dark jeans. He looked less like the powerful CEO everyone feared, and more like a man carrying too much responsibility. I'll carry those. He reached for my suitcase. I can manage. I know. He smiled gently. But you don't always have to. For reasons I couldn't explain, I let him. The drive north remained peaceful. City lights slowly disappeared behind rows of ancient oak trees. Finally, enormous iron gates opened without a sound. Beyond them stretched a breathtaking stone estate surrounded by gardens, fountains, and quiet walking paths. Nothing about it felt intimidating. It felt lonely. The front door opened before we reached it. An elegant older woman greeted us with a warm smile. You must be Hannah. I'm Margaret. I've been looking after this home for 22 years. She turned toward Oliver. And you must be the young gentleman I've heard so much about. Oliver nodded politely. Hi. A golden retriever suddenly raced into the foyer. Its tail wagged furiously. Oliver burst into laughter. Dog. Within seconds, he was kneeling on the floor while the dog happily licked his face. Margaret smiled knowingly. Well, I suppose Winston approves. I looked toward Damien. For the first time since we'd met, the tension had disappeared from his shoulders. Watching Oliver laugh inside that quiet house seemed to heal something words never could. Then Lucas entered from another hallway. His expression remained composed, but his eyes immediately found Damien. They're closer than we expected. The smile faded from Damien's face. He gave one almost invisible nod. I'll be right there. As he walked away, Oliver called after him. Mr. Doorboss. Damien turned. Yeah, buddy. Oliver hugged the golden retriever tightly before grinning. I think we opened the right door this time. Damien looked at me, then back at the little boy, and for the first time since all of this had begun, I realized that maybe, just maybe, Oliver had been right twice. The heart doesn't fall in love all at once. It happens quietly, one small choice at a time. The first morning at the estate felt strangely peaceful. No traffic, no sirens, only birdsong drifting through the open windows. For the first time in weeks, I woke without checking my phone for bad news. It almost felt unfamiliar. Oliver was already outside. I found him throwing a tennis ball across the garden while Winston raced happily through the dew-covered grass. You cheated, Oliver laughed. You started running before I threw it. The golden retriever barked proudly as if defending himself. Margaret smiled from the terrace. I don't believe Winston has ever liked anyone this quickly. Oliver hugged the dog's neck. He knows we're friends. I watched them together. For the first time since becoming a single mother. I saw my son playing without looking over his shoulder. That alone felt priceless. Damien entered the garden carrying 2 cups of coffee. I wasn't sure how you take it. I accepted one. You remembered. 1 cream. No sugar. I looked at him. You noticed? I notice more than people think. His answer carried no arrogance. Only honesty. We walked slowly along the stone path. Neither of us hurried to fill the silence. Some conversations didn't need words. I owe you an apology. I looked toward him. For what? For bringing danger into your life. I stopped walking. No, you didn't. I chose this job. I chose to stay. You never chose this. He gestured quietly toward the security cameras hidden among the trees. The guards. The gates. The precautions. I smiled gently. You know what I notice? What? They're all outside. He frowned slightly. I don't understand. I've never once felt unsafe with you. For several seconds, Damien simply looked at me. No one had ever separated the man from the life he carried. Until now. Later that afternoon, Oliver discovered a small wooden workshop behind the main house. Shelves overflowed with unfinished birdhouses, toy trains, and carved wooden animals. Who made these? Damien smiled. My father. Oliver carefully picked up a tiny wooden airplane. Did he teach you? He tried. Were you good? Damien laughed softly. Not even close. Oliver handed him a block of unfinished wood. You can practice. Margaret quietly covered her smile from the doorway. Watching the 2 of them together felt almost surreal. One little boy who had grown up without a father. One lonely man who had grown up without enough time with his own. Somehow, they understood each other without trying. That evening, Lucas arrived carrying another intelligence report. His expression immediately became serious. We found the photographer. Damien's attention sharpened. And he wasn't working alone. Lucas placed several documents across the table. Someone has been gathering information for months. Employees. Executives. Business partners. Then he turned another photograph over. Hannah, leaving Carter Holdings. Oliver holding his hand outside the childcare center. Damien's jaw tightened. Who ordered it? Lucas hesitated. We're close. But not yet. Silence filled the study. Finally, Damien spoke. No retaliation. Lucas looked surprised. They've crossed every line. I know. But Hannah and Oliver deserve peace. Not another war. Lucas nodded slowly. I understand. That night, I wandered through the estate library unable to sleep. Thousands of books surrounded the quiet room. One shelf caught my attention. Family photographs. Old birthdays. Fishing trips. Christmas mornings. Every frame stopped after Damien turned 18. Nothing newer. Nothing happier. I didn't hear him enter. You found them. I turned. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize. He walked beside me. I stopped taking photographs after my parents died. Why? Because I convinced myself memories only hurt. I looked at the empty spaces on the shelves. I think memories hurt. Only when we stop making new ones. He stared at me. The room suddenly felt smaller. Warmer. More honest than either of us expected. Hannah. His voice had grown almost hesitant. I've spent years surrounded by people, but I've never felt understood. I stepped a little closer. You don't have to explain yourself every minute. You don't have to earn kindness. You deserve it. His blue-gray eyes searched mine. Not for certainty. For permission. Slowly, he reached for my hand. Not demanding. Not possessive. Simply asking. I didn't pull away. Our fingers met gently. No dramatic music. No grand confession. Just 2 lonely people discovering that comfort sometimes begins with the smallest touch. Before either of us could speak again, Lucas appeared quietly at the library entrance. His face had lost every trace of calm. Damien. The single word was enough. Damien immediately understood. What happened? They know Hannah is here. The warmth vanished from the room. Lucas continued. A vehicle was spotted less than a mile from the estate. Damien instinctively stepped slightly in front of me. Not out of fear. Out of protection. He looked toward the dark windows beyond the library. Then back at me. I promised I'd keep you safe. His voice became steady. No matter what happens tonight. I intend to keep that promise. Love isn't proven by the battles we win. It's proven by the peace we choose to protect. The alarm never sounded. That was the frightening part. Everything remained quiet. Too quiet. Lucas stood beside the security monitors while Damien watched the estate through the library windows. The vehicle stopped at the old service road. Lucas spoke softly. No movement. No lights. No attempt to enter. Damien never looked away. They're waiting. For what? For me to make a mistake. I stayed upstairs with Oliver. He had fallen asleep clutching Winston's favorite tennis ball. The golden retriever refused to leave the bedroom door. Animals always sensed danger before people admitted it existed. I gently brushed Oliver's hair away from his forehead. I'll always keep you safe. The promise escaped my lips before I realized I had spoken aloud. Someone answered quietly behind me. So will I. I turned. Damien stood in the hallway, not wearing a suit, not carrying authority, just standing there like a man making a promise he intended to keep. Just after midnight, Lucas's radio crackled. They're moving. Every light inside the security room switched to infrared cameras. 3 figures crossed the outer tree line. Slow, careful, professional. They're testing the perimeter. Damien remained calm. No confrontation. Lucas looked surprised. We have the advantage. I know, but this ends tonight. He picked up his phone, called Detective Elena Ruiz. Lucas immediately understood. The evidence package? Everything. The surveillance. The financial records. The photographs. No more secrets. Within minutes, encrypted files began transferring to federal investigators who had quietly been building a case for months. Damien had never intended to solve everything alone. He had simply waited until innocent people could be protected first. Across the estate, flashing blue lights appeared in the distance. Then more. State police. Federal agents. Unmarked vehicles. The men hidden beyond the trees realized too late. Escape routes disappeared. Roadblocks closed. Within minutes, the operation was over. No dramatic gunfire. No reckless chase. Only handcuffs. Evidence. And justice arriving exactly where it belonged. Lucas lowered his binoculars. It's finished. Damien quietly closed his eyes. No. He smiled faintly. Now it is. Several weeks later, life slowly found its rhythm again. The investigation dominated newspaper headlines. Damien's name appeared everywhere. Some articles called him a ruthless businessman. Others praised his cooperation with authorities. He never answered any interviews. He had nothing left to prove. Carter Holdings felt different. Employees laughed more. The executive floor no longer whispered when I walked through it. Emily smiled every morning. Lucas even learned how to tell terrible jokes. The framed dinosaur still occupied its honored place inside Damien's office. Beside it now stood a wooden airplane. Damien had finished carving it himself. Oliver proudly declared it much better than the first one. He wasn't wrong. One sunny Saturday afternoon, the Carter Family Foundation opened a new childcare center for working single parents. No cameras followed us inside. No speeches lasted longer than necessary. Children simply ran across the playground while parents smiled with quiet relief. Margaret handed out homemade cookies. Lucas unsuccessfully attempted face painting. Oliver laughed so hard that Winston started barking with excitement. It felt wonderfully ordinary. Exactly the kind of day Damien had wanted to protect. As the celebration ended, Oliver tugged gently on Damien's sleeve. Can I ask something? Anything. Oliver looked between both of us. Are you coming home with us? Damien glanced at me. I smiled before answering. I think. This is home. He looked almost speechless. For a man who negotiated billion-dollar agreements without hesitation, 3 simple words had completely disarmed him. He slowly reached for my hand. This time, I held it without fear, without uncertainty, without looking back. Several months later, autumn covered the estate with golden leaves. Oliver raced Winston across the gardens while Margaret pretended to complain about muddy footprints. Lucas sat on the terrace drinking coffee instead of reading security reports. Peace had become routine. Inside the workshop, Damien carefully placed one final photograph onto the shelf. Not his parents. Not business partners. Us. Oliver stood between us wearing the biggest smile imaginable. I looked at the growing collection of family photographs. You started taking pictures again. He nodded. You were right. About what? He smiled. Memories only hurt. When we stopped making new ones. I rested my head gently against his shoulder. Neither of us needed grand declarations. The silence already said everything. Outside, Oliver ran toward us holding another drawing. 3 stick figures. 1 dog. 1 enormous house. Above them, written in uneven blue crayon, were 6 simple words. We opened the right door together. Damien laughed quietly. So, he looked at me. Do you think one wrong door really changed everything? I looked toward Oliver, toward Winston, toward the peaceful home neither of us had expected to find. Then I answered the only way I could. It wasn't the wrong door. It was the right one, opened at exactly the right moment. Because sometimes destiny doesn't arrive with perfect timing. Sometimes, it simply waits behind an ordinary door until 2 lonely hearts are finally brave enough to open it.